All right, moving along. I'm going to do a quick day at the beach, mainly some environmental emergencies. We're going almost into July now, so stuff we're going to start seeing out at the beach. While you're out there lounging, what are some possible dangers or injuries that you might see? We're going to talk about kind of the more common ones, especially here in Florida. And it's going to be kind of rapid fire, kind of quick. I'll try to get it all in. Again, stop me if you have any questions. So first off, we're going to talk about drowning. Anyone who knows me knows that this is my specialty. This is what I focus on. I can talk to you for hours on this, and I'll give you some links later for resources. But again, this is just going to be a rapid fire where I want you guys to know in the field and be able to understand what your treatment priorities are so you can get the best treatment to the patient. So what kind of problem is drowning? Well, it's a big problem. About 372,000 deaths every year annually. That does not include natural disasters. It does not include homicides and suicides, mass casualties. So you guys see these boats flipping over refugees, 150 people drowned. Those don't count toward our statistics. So very gross underestimate. The other problem is, while drowning deaths suck, what sucks even more is a kid going home who lives and is now in a vegetative state. And when we start counting those numbers, it's far beyond this number right here. So that's the worst case scenario. We hate seeing that. When that damage is done, you can do nothing about it. So the whole point of these lectures is so you know the treatment priority because you have the most amount of good. When that kid gets to me and the brain damage is done, the only job I have is get them home to their parent to live out whatever life they can. I cannot bring that brain tissue back. The most amount of good in any drowning cases with our lifeguards and with our EMS groups in the first 5 minutes. So in the U.S., about 4,000 deaths per year. It's the leading cause of injury death in kids, especially 1 to 4-year-olds, primarily an injury of pediatrics. In Florida, about 400 deaths a year. We continually lead the nation in drowning deaths, which you can imagine with our sunshine and our water all over the place. So next I want to talk about what drowning is. Drowning, it wasn't well defined for a long time, and we weren't speaking the same language, and that was a big issue. What was drowning to me was something different to you. So about 10, actually 12 years ago now, we redefined drowning and gave it a uniform definition. And what is the process of experiencing respiratory impairment from submersion or immersion in liquid? Essentially what that means is any patient who is submerged underwater, their airway goes underwater, and they have breathing trouble because of it, is now a drowning patient. You can see it has nothing to do with living or dying, has nothing to do with long-term morbidity. All it says is this is the drowning process. These patients are now drowning patients. Along with this definition, we came up with a list of terms that we like to avoid, mainly near drowning. You'll see this term everywhere. We just did a study that looked at the last 5 years of literature, and still about 20 to 30% of the scientific literature uses near drowning. Despite my best efforts with Captain Lawrence and other folks in JFRD, that damn word is still in the protocols. I'm going to talk to you about that later. But almost every major EMS system still uses the term near drowning. Our dispatch system still uses near drowning. I want you guys to know that that's not an acceptable term anymore. When someone drowns and they survive, it's a non-fatal drowning. You can't nearly drown. You either drown or you don't. So again, when you're educating the public, when you're talking to other providers, it's just a great educational tool. And again, this has been out for 12, 13 years. It's nothing new. So hopefully we are improving that in our literature and in our EMS textbooks as we speak. So the drowning process, what exactly happens? I don't like to harp on all the steps of the drowning process because it's not that important. All you need to know is the person goes underwater, they struggle, they hold their breath in an attempt to survive. At some point, usually 30 seconds to a minute later, they have to breathe. The brain says, dude, I need oxygen. Take a deep breath in, water goes in the airways. We always talk about wet and dry drowning. We don't care about that anymore because no one actually knows how much water goes in, and it doesn't matter. The end result is always hypoxia. Again, it doesn't matter how you get to that point, as long as you know that lack of oxygen, hypoxia, is the primary cause of all morbidity and mortality in drowning, and it's got to be the focus of our treatment. Okay? Any questions on that? Again, wet, dry drowning, active, passive, salt, fresh water, I don't care. As long as you know the primary treatment goal is reversal of hypoxia. So, if hypoxia is the primary cause of all injury and death, how do we reverse the hypoxia? Oxygen, any way you possibly can. Mouth to mask, bag valve mask, BiPAP, whatever you have, whatever the protocols call for, whatever the patient condition calls for, you need to give these patients oxygen. I like to call this my dumb slide, but it's actually, I think, one of the best slides in terms of getting the point across. 21, what does that represent?
Oxygen.
Oxygen in the ambient air. How much air do we breathe out? How much percentage air?
16.
16, about 16. It's all greater than 0. So people come up on scene, they say, well, I got this bag valve mask, but I don't have the oxygen hooked up yet, so I got to hook that up because my protocols say I got to do that. And well, I got this pocket mask, but I'm going to wait till this comes around. I really want to intubate this person. I haven't intubated in a while. Give this patient something. If you're breathing mouth to mouth, you're giving them 16% oxygen. If you're breathing by bag valve mask without O2, you're giving them 21% oxygen. That's greater than zero. The seconds to minutes you spend trying to get an advanced airway or trying to hook up oxygen, you're losing brain cells. You don't have that much time. So again, anything is greater than zero. So I want you to be that person that grabs that bag valve mask off the rig. Someone else has come behind you with oxygen. Start breathing for these patients. So we got this patient right here. This is very common with severe drowning patients. They get this foamy material that comes out of the airway. It's two things. Water and the surfactant in the lungs creates foam, and also vomit. They've been gasping for breath for a couple minutes trying to survive, so now they have all this foam coming out. So this would be very common to see in a severe drowning patient. When you look at any EMS protocol, any EMS textbook, it says you have emesis and foam in the airway, you've got to get it out. You got to suction, and then you recheck, and then you suction again, you recheck, and then you turn them in the recovery position, and you keep doing this. What's happening while you're doing all this stuff? Exactly. Oxygen continues to fall, continues to fall. When we keep suction, next thing you know, 2 minutes have gone by, and you haven't given this person a single breath, and it's 2 minutes of brain tissue that we have lost. So what I advocate for is try to give these people ventilations, and it's also in the current European Resuscitation Council guidelines. Do not try and attempt to remove the foam as it will keep coming. If you treat these patients, you know you get that foamy material out and it keeps coming out. Try to give these patients ventilations. Try to bag through that foam. Yeah, they might get pneumonia, but they might also survive. And they might also keep their brain tissue. So try to give them ventilations. If you cannot get ventilations in, then you go to other things to try to clear the airway, like chest compressions, whatever your protocols call for. But please try to get ventilations in these people. It can be the difference between life and death. All right, so we got this dude right here. You're walking through Jack's speech. This guy, he had his Taco Bell for the third time today. He hasn't taken his insulin in a while. You walk by, he doesn't look good, so you check his pulse. He's pulseless. He didn't go in the water. He just laid down and died. What probably happened with him? Huh? What? What happened with him? That guy?
Got too hot.
Nope. Heart attack. There we go. You got a heart attack. This is your typical heart attack patient right here. So he laid down and died. We need to be able to differentiate this patient from a drowning patient. This is a cardiac cause. Okay, his heart stopped. I like to say his tank is full, but the engine is broken. So until the point that his engine broke, he had a full tank of gas. This is where compression-only CPR comes into play. We have pretty good oxygen saturation, so if we can just be that person's engine and do continuous compressions, these people tend to do pretty good. All right, this is very different from your drowning patient, and we've got to be able to differentiate the two, both in teaching the public and in our own practice. Because this person right here, the drowning patient, this is a respiratory cause. They had a cardiac arrest due to hypoxia, so their gas tank is empty. Their engine probably works, so we need to give them gas. That's why ventilations take priority. That's why continuous compression or continuous CPR is not indicated for drowning patients. Because we have to refill the tank and give them oxygen before we can get their heart restarted. So we've got to separate those two. And the protocols for drowning resuscitation are way back, like page 160 something of the AHA guidelines. They're kind of tucked back. If you don't really pay attention and don't know the goals of treatment, you won't understand that. So again, make sure that ventilations are being given to these people. Additionally, spinal immobilization. It's important to understand, and again, this all comes down to protocols. Lots of protocols say we got to immobilize these patients. I just want you to understand that the prevalence of spinal injury in drowning patients is crazy low. About 0.5% of patients actually have spinal injuries. And if they do, they usually have signs of massive trauma, a good story for what happened. Someone says, I saw them fall off the pier, or they're drunk or altered. Otherwise, if you don't meet in this criteria, they usually don't have a C-spine injury. And additionally, if they're dead, please don't backboard that patient. And I'll show you a video of the patient that shows that point right there. But dead people should not be backboarded and fully packaged because they're dead and there's more priority treatments we need to take care of. But just understand, if this patient can talk to you and tell you what happened, or someone said, yeah, I saw them swim out and suddenly they went underwater, they don't have a C-spine injury. Okay? The problem is the C-spine precautions get in the way of our other treatment priorities. So for drowning patients, to wrap that section up real quick, any patient with hypoxia, hypotension, ultramental status, or abnormal lung sounds, those are patients with increased mortality, and they need to go to the hospital. If you have a majority of the patients we pull out of the ocean, they are completely normal. They might be coughing a little bit, but their exam's normal. They can mentate, their vital signs are good. They can go home if they want to. Okay? Again, I don't go against your transport protocols, but if they say, no, I feel good to go home, I have my family here, they can watch me, they do very well. There is 0% mortality, essentially, if they're not showing any signs initially on their lung exam or vital signs. And if you have any more interest in drowning, this is my research website, drowninglit.com. Any new research, I also have a podcast and some review articles up there. If you have any interest, anything you ever want to know about drowning is on there. All right, so now lightning injuries. So as you may know, Florida, we continually lead the U.S. in lightning strikes and lightning deaths. These are fatalities over about a 9-year span, 46. It's not a huge amount of fatalities compared to other things, but it does happen. So some clinical manifestations, this is interesting, it's actually called ferning. This is pathognomonic, which is essentially the term that means if you see this, it's associated with this disease. This is ferning of the skin. So when lightning strikes a person, it follows salt channels, follows salt across the skin. It makes this really interesting lightning pattern across your skin. So if you come to a scene and someone says, hey, this got down, I don't know what happened, they got this, lightning strike. So clinical manifestation, obviously we worry about the lethal arrhythmias. You can really get anything. You can get PEA, asystole, you can get a VTAC, VFib. You can also see tachycardia, bradycardia, brand new AV blocks. You can see anything in these patients. But the most common cause of death is going to be your arrhythmia. So how do we treat these people? First off, ensure your own safety. This is not a safe environment. Usually when we're rolling these people, it's usually on a sunny day. It's usually a nasty day. It was lightning all around. We're going to do what's called reverse triage, and then we're going to focus on resuscitating the patient. So to ensure your own safety, first off, don't be the tallest object. And don't be standing next to the tallest object. Lots of people out in the wilderness like to hide under a tree. That's not smart. We saw there's two types of lightning injuries which cause from something flashing over to from the tallest object. So do not be the tallest object. Do not stand next to the tallest object. If you have to be out in the environment, a large building is better than a hardtop vehicle, which is better than a dense forest. So if you can be in a building, great. If you can't, getting inside your rig or inside a car, preferably not convertible with a hardtop, is going to be better. If you're out in the wilderness, try to get in a dense collection of trees, not just by one tall tree. And then this is what's called the lightning position. Some of you may find yourself in a situation, my wife and I have, where you just have no option. You have to grin and bear it and hope for the best. And this actually is called the lightning position. And what this does is getting up on the balls of your feet, preferably on a rubberized mat if you're camping and have one. Covering your ears to avoid tympanic injury and getting as low as you can. And what that does is just minimize your risk of being struck by lightning. Is it perfect? No. Is there evidence for it? No. But just mainly based on the ways people die from lightning strikes, this may be your best bet if you find yourself out in the middle of nowhere. Then reverse triage. So return of spontaneous circulation often returns with ventilations. You guys know start triage and all of our other triage systems. You go, you check the person for ventilations, you give a breath, you might reposition, and if they don't start breathing again, you go on the next person, you flat tag them. It's important to understand with a lightning strike, you actually should reverse triage and treat those patients first and keep giving them ventilations because they actually have a higher chance of surviving and coming back as does a bomb blast or someone else who has a massive trauma. So again, try to give priority to those patients and restore ventilations. And then resuscitate. There's nothing fancy with it. It's BLS, ACLS. Obviously, look for your cardiac rhythms, and that's going to be your most common cause of death. Other possible causes is if they get thrown in trauma, they get thrown to something, maybe a head injury or something falls on them. Usually, it's going to be cardiac arrest. That's going to be your cause of death. It's probably good to transport anyone struck by lightning. If you get struck by lightning and can actually look okay, go ahead and get in the hospital. I've had a couple patients and they just end up getting obs for a few hours, but it's probably a good idea to get them to the hospital. All right, moving along. Marine envenomation. So again, you're at the beach with your crew having a good day and someone comes out of the ocean screaming. How are you going to treat them for the marine envenomation? Quick warning, there is very little evidence on this. This is all based on case studies. So there's really not great evidence on this, but I want you to recognize life-threatening problems and know the initial treatment for that. So this is just a depiction of jellyfish at the Great Barrier Reef. So you can see one small region in the world. This is the jellyfish out there. So there's so many freaking species. It's hard to get them all straight. We're going to talk about the ones that are most prevalent here in our area. First, we're going to talk about kind of the common jellyfish, and they're all similar in the fact they have this thing called a nematocyte. And what that does is send out a barb and into the patient's skin and release venom. So here, if you're walking down our beach here, our common species we see is sea nettle and moon jellyfish. Anyone ever been stung by them? It sucks. It doesn't ruin your day, but for the next couple hours you're kind of hurting. You get a little rash here, you get some urticaria, it might itch, might sting. But again, it's not terrible. It's just kind of uncertain. Next one we're going to talk about the hydrozoa. They're a little more serious. Fire coral, any divers here might get a little fire coral. Also Portuguese mantle. These tend to come out for a couple weeks every year. They're one of the most beautiful creatures you'll ever see, but they hurt. I got stung once about the size of a quarter of my foot, and I thought I was going to die. I was done. But they're nasty, nasty creatures, and kids especially, because these look like beautiful balloons floating through the water. And when I used to lifeguard, I would watch kids just swim right up to it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. And they swim right up to it, grab it, and start screaming. So that's one of the worst things about them. Those tentacles are really, really long. So you can see, hey, it's a little creature over there, and it's tagging you. The worst thing about it, where a jellyfish is a couple tentacles that brush up against you and they keep swimming, the manowar, it's almost as thin as like human hair. And it's almost completely clear. And what it does is it wraps around you, breaks off, and keeps stinging. So that's the problem. It's not just a touch and go. It stays on you and it keeps stinging. It wraps around your chest. I've seen it around the face, around the arms. It gets pretty nasty. And we get much worse injuries too. This is the fire coral here. Again, same family of animals, but you see you start getting some blisters and stuff. But this is your classic bad man-o-war sting. And just, you can see where it wrapped around. So when the lifeguards come on scene, our first job, we got to pick these things off because it's still on and it's still stinging. That person screams. You can see here, imagine if you get face and other stuff and start getting swelling, it can really cause more problems than just your general jellyfish sting. So what we worry about with these patients, jellyfish, manowar, whatever, the things we're going to look for are signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis. That's worst case scenario. Majority of these patients, it stings, it sucks, whatever, they go home. But what you guys have to look for when you get called to the beach, because sometimes we'll be called for this, is this person having signs of anaphylaxis? So things we worry about, bronchospasm, so difficulty breathing, you might start hearing wheezing on our exam. Angioedema, meaning swelling of the facial structures and mucosa structures. GI symptoms, actually that's a diagnostic criteria for anaphylaxis, is nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. So maybe they are having a rash plus abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting. You got to worry about anaphylaxis, and also a diffuse rash. So the treatment for any of these things, again, very poor evidence. Few randomized controlled trials. Most of the trials, they take venom in a petri dish or in a lab tube, and they put something in it and see if it denatures it. It doesn't tell us anything about what happens in the actual person. So very poor evidence. But we all know our treatment goals. ABCs first. So stabilize the airway and then evaluate for signs of anaphylaxis. So if they have anaphylaxis, we need to treat it. What's going to be our treatment for anaphylaxis? Epi. What's the dosing for epi? What's that? Okay, 1 to 1,000. How many milligrams for an adult? 0.3. Okay, so you'll see differences for 0.3 in general and 0.15 in general for pediatric doses. That's the dose that comes in our EpiPens here. We can always do an IV drip for refractory. Hopefully that's about there in the hospital by then, putting them on IV epi and an IV fluids. If you only have an adult EpiPen and the patient is a kid, can you use the EpiPen? Yes. If you have a pediatric one and the patient's an adult, can you use it? Get epi in these patients. If they're showing signs of anaphylaxis, this is your life-saving treatment right here. Next treatment goal is remove the nematocysts. Like I said, especially with the manowar, they continue to sting and stick to the skin. So you just want to rinse the affected area. You want to use seawater before fresh water if you can. There is evidence that the fresh water, the difference in osmolality actually releases more venom. So you might pour it on them and then it starts stinging more. Again, if fresh water is all you have, great. You can use saline. You can use your normal saline from the bags. Vinegar is recommended and used by all the leading life-saving lifeguard agencies around the world, but there's very little evidence for it. But just know there is thought that vinegar denatures the proteins as well. The problem is they're not sure what species it works for. And most people don't actually know what they're stung by when they come out of the water. And use a glove or forceps to get the tentacles off. Do not sting yourself. Do not make yourself a patient. So please wear gloves. But again, if it's a manowar sting, look closely because you'll see a very, very fine, clear thing wrapped around the patient that you need to get off. What we don't want to do, we do not want to rub the sand, you don't want to use alcohol and mineral spirits per urine. Everybody wants to pee. I was in Portugal teaching last week, and we as instructors decided the only indication to pee on a jellyfish sting is with 2 consenting adults who are both into that kind of thing. So otherwise, don't pee on it. You might have a lawsuit on your hands.
What if you are killed?
All right, treatment control. Also, again, some evidence for vinegar. Hot water tolerance actually works really well for all these species I'm going to talk about. So get some warm water as they can tolerate it. That really does help. NSAIDs, narcotics for severe. There'll be patients you have to give narcotics to for these things, especially if you see some other stuff like box jellyfish or irukandji, which we don't see in Florida much. But if you happen to travel somewhere else, it is severe, severe pain. And then transport, mainly signs of anaphylaxis. Again, the majority of these patients don't need to be transported, but if there's any doubt that they might develop that, go ahead and do it. There is no evidence currently to link bee allergies to jellyfish allergies, so that's the first question all my lifeguards ask. Are you allergic to bees? But there's really no reason to ask because there's not a great link between the two. But if the person has lots of allergies to lots of things, it might raise your suspicion that something bad may happen. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is stingrays. This is kind of your common stingray that you guys are used to seeing. It's going to contain a barb back here, which we'll show you in a second, and it has a venom apparatus associated with that barb. If you're ever at our beaches, you may see something similar. It's called a manta ray. So it's a filter feeder up here at the front. It has these 2 large wings. A lot of people mistake them for sharks because they like to tip their wings up and swim by. It looks like 2 sharks coming by. And you'll see them jump out of the water. Huge 6-7 foot manta rays jump out of the water. Really cool creatures. They actually don't have a barb. They do not have a venom apparatus. So just so you know, not as dangerous. So stingray, this is coming off so the body's over here. This is coming off the tail of the stingray. It has a retro-serrated tail and barb. And what is under that is this nice little serrated bone structure which likes to stick in your ankle. And it's encased in a sheath that has venom covering it. So the most common way people get stung by these is they step on the stingray. Just like a scorpion, it reflexively whips its tail up and tags you on the foot. This is why if you ever go somewhere like Stingray Bay or something on a cruise, they like you to shuffle your feet. Or even in Jax Beach, a lot of times you'll see a lot of them swimming through the water on certain days. Some of those days, you go ahead and shuffle your feet when you're walking out. It'll scare them away, and it'll keep you from stepping right on top of them and piss them off. Get some pretty nasty injuries from these. So look at that barb. That's pretty intense.
Pretty big barb.
Yeah. Various parts of the body. We have the bottom of the foot here. We have the wrist. I've actually seen this come to RED all the way out here. I've seen a patient just like this. We'll get to what you just said. Clinical manifestations of very immediate intense pain, ecchymosis, skin, fat can start necrosing. That's kind of later findings, also blistering. You guys will usually come on scene and just kind of see this. You can also get systemic symptoms. There is a venom on that sheath, and it can cause you to just feel not right, essentially. There are deaths reported. Usually with trauma. You just talked about chest trauma, so that's the Alex crocodile hunter. He died by a barb to his heart. So it wasn't really the venom that killed him, it was the trauma, the cardiac trauma. Also reported paralysis, hypotension, and arrhythmias. And there's a case report of vocal cord paralysis because they took the raw stingray tail because she believed that the venom contained something to help her sexual activity. So you just never know with these people. But just so you know, usually it's a local injury, especially in the foot. Your treatment, you're going to control bleeding. If you have it, soak it in hot water to tolerance. Neurovascular checks, do all your distal pulse and muscles, motor sensation checks to make sure that's all intact. And consider transport. Reasons to transport these people, obviously allergic reaction. If there's a barb still in them, definitely. Penetrating a joint, large wounds, or neurovascular compromise. If they just got hit real quick and there's a hole there and they're doing fine otherwise, you can probably wash down they're okay to go. But if there's any question about foreign bodies still being in there, which is pretty hard for you guys to evaluate, you may either transport or at least recommend that they go to the hospital for an x-ray to make sure nothing's still in there. And now we're going to go into the fish. These are common in our area, the lionfish and the catfish. Lionfish, one of the most beautiful fish out in the ocean, one of the most annoying fish in the ocean. It is taking over our reefs and killing off other species. This is how it hurts you. It has spines on the dorsum and behind the fins as well. That all have venomous sheaths on them. When it goes into you, it retracts its sheath and squirts venom up into the body. Also common with our fishermen around here, catfish. So it's actually the whiskers of the catfish are not dangerous. It's the spines behind the pectoral and dorsal fin that can get you. So if you fish, there's actually a correct way to hold a catfish. I don't know how, I just know the YouTube videos. So look at it before you go fishing, because these things can cause the damage as well. In general, of both species, immediate intense pain may lead to hallucinations or delirium. You can see this massive swelling. Various systemic symptoms. Deaths are very rare, but they are reported. That's with some other species, mainly stonefish in some other countries. Treatment for this is about the same. Control bleeding, soak in hot water, neurovascular checks, and consider transport.
Is that for the lionfish or the catfish?
Both. Yeah, they both are very similar manifestations. Transport, same as before, allergic reactions if the barb's still there, penetrating a joint, large wounds, neurovascular compromise, or if the patient just doesn't move. Lastly here, we're going to go over hypothermia, or hyperthermia. So very common on the beach actually. People don't take care of themselves well. There's sometimes not a lot of shelter. It's already getting hot as hell out there. So you may be called to the beach to take care of some of these patients. There's a whole spectrum of hyperthermia, but there's two that we need to focus on, and that's heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Now there's this temperature of 40 C, which is say it is the difference between the two, but it's not so important, the temperature. What's important is the neuro manifestations. So heat exhaustion is generally a temperature under 40 C. But most importantly, they have no CNS involvement. They might be a little tired, but in general, they're still able to meditate, still able to talk to you, still able to take fluids in. When we get CNS involvement, we worry more about heat stroke. And this is what kills people. People can cook the brains. So these are the really sick people we got to worry about. Two different types of heat stroke, and you guys will see both of these types. So the classic heat stroke is your elderly or very young who can't take care of themselves well, incapacitated, or chronically ill. We'll see this time of year where people don't have AC and their family hasn't really come by to help them. So they've just been sweating it out in their house and no one's really checked on them in a while. Commonly occurs during heat waves and develops very slowly over a couple of days. That's different from our exertional heat stroke, which we saw about 120 of during the Gate River Run. Generally younger, healthy people engaging in strenuous activity and develops rapidly. So it develops over minutes to hours of exercise. So resuscitation goals for this, ABCs, obviously. Start cooling, and then we want to treat the patient to prevent end organ damage. So in terms of cooling, do not administer Tylenol. This is not a process that is treated with Tylenol. It's not the same as a very different process. So we need to cool through active means. We'll talk about that in a second. You try to cool until a core temp of 101 to 102. At that point, you can really hold your cooling, and the body will keep cooling itself through sweating and other means. But if they're already up at 104, 105, you start cooling these patients. Different ways to cool. We cool the ambulance, turn the AC on, crank it up in the back. Get that area around them nice and cool. Get them out of the environment. Even if you don't think you're going to transport the patient, you might stay on scene for 10 minutes or so and have them in the back and just get them out of the sun. Ice water immersion, this has more to do if you guys are doing a large event like the river run or something. This is one of the best and most efficient means to cool someone down, putting them in a bucket of ice water. Obviously, we reserve this for our patients who are meditating and can follow commands and generally keep their head above water. But do know that if you do some large events, you may see this. You can do ice packs in your kind of major arterial areas, your axilla, groin, neck, head, and that definitely helps. This is kind of one of our major means for the river run, how we start cooling people. Cold, wet towels. Both of these are less efficient than other means, but they may be the best thing you have. Mist and fan technique is one of the most useful ones in the emergency department. This is where you have a fan on someone, you're using a spray bottle. And essentially what you're doing for them is sweating for them. At a certain point, your body stops sweating. You're not able to cool yourself like you should be. So what this does is actually sweat for you. So you may see this in the hospital or at large events as well. And then transport, obviously any neurologic changes, any temperature not improving. So it's okay with these people, if you're at a large event, to treat these people for 10, 15, 20 minutes and start getting their core temp down. If it's improving, they can sit up, sip some fluids, and then maybe go on their merry way in a little bit. But if they're not improving at that time, you may need to send them to the hospital. You have a little more advanced means through central venous catheters and some other machines, fancy stuff to cool them down. Question?
Room temp IV fluids or cold?
So room temp is okay. There's no great evidence that cold IV fluid actually is better. Most of the guidelines will say use cold IV fluid, but there's no great evidence. The room temperature is going to be much lower. You don't want to flood these people with fluids though. You can actually get a bad pulmonary edema if you're severely hypothermic patients. So not flooding with fluids If you know they're exertional, like obviously they've been losing a lot, you might want to give them a liter or two, but really hold that there. That's not going to be your best cooling means. And did you mean intravenous? Or
Yeah,
yes.
cold.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're giving IV fluids, there's no great evidence to say cold's better. Your goal with that is to replete whatever volume loss they have. It's not so much to cool them.
Okay.
Your better means are going to be with your ice packs,
Okay.
because you can actually cause more damage. Does that clear that up? All right, cool. Actually wrapped up nice and quick. So, drowning. Like I said, I want you to walk out of this room knowing my focus of treatment when I see a drowning patient, no matter what anyone else on scene says. Because I guarantee you, someone's going to run up and say, I'm a doctor, do this, I'm a nurse, do this. As long as you know your goal of treatment is reversal of hypoxia, you will do the most amount of good. We do not do the Heimlich maneuver on drowning patients. We do not backboard dead drowning patients. We do not put anything else above reversing hypoxia in drowning patients. Any question on that? Fantastic. Lightning injuries, most common cause of death is going to be your cardiac arrhythmias. Reverse triage. So if you come on scene with an MCI, you want to give those patients ventilation. See if you can get those black tags back into a red category by giving them ventilations. Getting a rhythm strip as fast as possible or an AED to see if they're in a shockable rhythm. Marine envenomations, think locally, so just think of the species we have here, and then evaluate for signs of anaphylaxis and treat accordingly. And then lastly, hyperthermia. Hyperthermia, differentiate heat stroke versus heat exhaustion. Start cooling them if you can. Otherwise, get into the hospital for more advanced treatment.